C.J. Stroud is one of the top Heisman candidates this college football season. And it's not a secret to why he's doing what he's doing. He has a lot of talent that I'm going to break down in this video of what his biggest strengths are to his game. He's not a perfect prospect, but he has to be up there with the top prospects in this upcoming class. So we're going to dive into the film of C.J. Stroud and show why he is having such a successful season. Now, I think one of Stroud's biggest strengths is his ability to throw into tight coverage. He's able to throw into windows where there is a defender, and he still can make the throw. His arm strength, distance-wise, is not one of the top arms you'll ever see, but he has very good zip and can fit the ball into tight places. What it really comes down to is being able to look to the outside, notice the one-on-one coverage, and he puts the ball in a spot where he places it in front of the receiver. It's impossible for a defender to go catch it, and he can lead the receiver further down the field, gain some extra yards for your football team, and puts it in a spot where only Ohio State's catching it. As you're going to see in this next one, his jump ball throws are very, very good. He makes these calculated risk throws where it's a contested play here, but only Ohio State is coming down with this ball. So I think what comes down to it is his calculated risks have been huge. And enhancing that further is his back shoulder ball ability. I mean, you have to build a connection with the receivers to do some of this. Like Garrett Wilson here is a great catch. But Stroud is placing the ball in a spot where it is only going to be an Ohio State receiver that catches the ball. I think this one's a key example towards the sideline. Instead of this being a pure 50-50 ball, he puts it in a spot where Garrett Wilson has to turn around, but it is only him that's going to catch this. So I think his ability to position where the ball is going really helps this team. I think also his layering is actually pretty good. We'll see a few here where he basically floats the ball over a second level defender and fits it right in between, pretty often maybe a linebacker and a safety, and kind of gets in that intermediate area, which to me is a great skill. I'm going to highlight this play versus Wisconsin. Watch this defender here climb up right here. He is lost. He's not looking at the receiver, and his back is turned at this point, and that safety does not have enough room to get back in there. Stroud recognizes this immediately the second that defender turns his eyes. He's lost on that receiver, and that safety does not have enough time. That is just beautifully executed. And this example against Notre Dame, I think, is also another one where he floats it, and it actually ends up turning into a touchdown. You know, it gives enough room for the receiver to keep going. And this ability to recognize where the defender is on the play results in scores like this. He also, this season, has been very successful at going over the middle. He is able to manipulate the defense and kind of make safeties specifically move around and kind of discover an open position for himself when looking up the middle of the field. He's turned some touchdowns out of it quite a bit. I think he's got good eyes of noticing when, let's say we got a safety coming up in the box. Okay, I'm going to look over often to a slot or tight end and kind of get something like a post going in there. And it ends up working a lot of the times. He's able to notice that in the defense. So he's good at reading kind of what the middle of the field's going to look like. I want to highlight two plays. First one against Indiana here. They go deep with cover 2 here. And this leaves a wide open space in the middle. Stroud sees this. Look at how many defenders we have there. We got 4 defenders in the nearby area, but because they run 2 deep safeties, Stroud can realize that middle of the field's wide open. And here against Notre Dame, you're going to notice a defender here go up in the box. Stroud realizes, okay, we got one-on-one coverage here. I'm just going to take my shot up the middle because we have it wide open there. So he realizes they're sending heavy blitz here. That opens up the middle of the field, and Stroud hits him in stride for a touchdown. Now, he hasn't thrown the ball deep like a ton, but when he hits on a throw, these are some of the most beautiful deep passes I have seen. He puts it right in the bucket, perfectly drops it in there. I mean, there's just some phenomenal plays that you'll see. Specifically, this Penn State ball is something that I haven't seen that very often. This has got to be one of the best throws I've seen on tape, and I really think this is a credit to what he can do in the deep area. And I'll talk a bit about later. Stroud is not a perfect prospect. He didn't hit all of these. There were a lot of them, and there's a huge reason why. He is consistently doing one thing that maybe causes an incompletion. But I think on the ones he does hit, it's an amazing throw on all of these. I'd say Stroud's perhaps biggest strength, and when we look at the grades later, what he graded out as almost perfect in every game, is he is mobile. He knows how to move, and he can not only move and run to get first downs, but he knows how to work the pocket. He also knows how to escape the pocket and then go towards the sideline and kind of get some good balls there. But he is a threat to run the ball. And you'll see on a few of them, that is a threat to the defense, that you're going to see defenders come up to the box and also just chase him on a play action. And that's going to lead to a touchdown because they're biting on the run, because you don't want to let him get in the open field. He is going to tear you up that way. I really like this decision against Indiana. At this moment right here, he realizes all this open space, he's going to take it, and that's a nice gain. And this one, although it's brought back against Michigan, the athleticism on tape here is phenomenal. He doesn't force the throw, he keeps going, and he actually ends up in the end zone. Although it was brought back, it's pretty phenomenal effort. That and his ability to work with the sideline pair together really nicely. If we look at some sideline throws specifically, he really knows how to throw on a tightrope here. A lot of them on the run, and specifically when we look at this Notre Dame game from this year, he can just, this is how I see Stroud. I think if he can do what he's been doing in college and take care of the football pretty well, I think he can succeed. I think that the issue could be if he starts forcing things, that might be, how we see something go wrong. But if you look at this Notre Dame game and you take a look at these 3 sideline throws, if he can do this on a regular basis and do more of the, chunk plays and not necessarily force the deep ones all the time, I think that will be a huge success for him. I think that he has the ability to put it in a spot, and almost all of them were balls that would be caught in the NFL too. Like the receiver was able to get in 2 feet. There was a few crazy ones where it doesn't even make sense how the receivers can catch it, but Stroud can put the ball in the perfect spot to do that. And, I think that this is a valuable skill, because if you can work it in the sideline on any level and get those 2 feet for your receiver, that's something that's going to translate. So this video is focusing on why Stroud is a Heisman candidate, but if you want to know why he's not the perfect prospect, his biggest weakness has to be definitely, we talked about it earlier, he doesn't have the best arm. He has the zip, but I'd say his biggest weakness is balls dying. He threw a lot of balls low specifically that just didn't quite reach the receiver. And I think that could potentially be an issue, but I don't see it as a overly concerning one. I think that he can develop it a little bit, but you're going to see that a bit where on these deep throws, it maybe just hits the defender's back because he can't quite reach it, or on some of these more intermediate and shorter plays, he isn't quite able to reach it there. I want to talk about Stroud as an overall player. He's going to be at, right now with my adjusted grade, I have him at like a 90.9 is where I currently rank him, which puts him second behind Bryce Young. I'm changing my process a little bit this year. I'm going to be giving grades for every players. Once again, like last episode of the Bryce Young, I will include in the description the Google Drive folder, which includes a prospect breakdown and all the stats I'm going to talk about, as well as the spreadsheet with how I analyze this data. I watched 260 plays almost worth of C.J. Stroud, and so this kind of is a good sample size of being able to conclude with some of this data. So right now what I want to do is, so far I've really broken down 2 quarterbacks in next year's draft, and I think they will be the 2 off the board. Where do those 2 at the moment stack up against each other? So let's start with Stroud, and I'll work in a bit of Young statistics too, and then we'll do a full comparison. Let's start with Stroud here. When he throws the ball under 16 yards, he is completing 79.56% of his passes in that area. And he is throwing it in that area almost 57% of the time, which is slightly less than Bryce Young. It's very, very close. It's within about 1%. So they're throwing it in the same area, and they are also within a few percentage points of each other's completion percentage. So in the short area, they're pretty similar. Then there starts to be a bit of a difference, which is where Stroud is throwing 60% completion in the intermediate area. He definitely works the middle of the field a lot more. He also threw the ball in the middle of the field area 5% more than Young did. So he's throwing there in the middle about 35% of the time, which then the other 5% gets thrown in with the deep, where Stroud is completing 35.29%, which is higher than Young, but he is also throwing the ball deeper 5% less of the time. He is throwing it 7% of the time to that deeper area. Young is throwing it about 12% of the time there. So the biggest difference in where they're throwing in the field is Stroud will throw it in the middle of the field more often, and Young will take his chances deep a little further. So I also want to point out the one other statistic that I thought was interesting. For Stroud specifically, he completed 80% of his passes on third down. That is very impressive. So he has a very good completion percentage and moving the chains there. But this is more so what Stroud did here. This is what he individually kind of showed on tape. And now I'm going to talk about the comparison between the two. Some more data to kind of show that exact comparison. When it comes to the overall grade, which I'll talk about in a bit, but I still am going by the eye test for that. I do an average. I grade every single game on a number of categories. And after that, I do two calculations. I basically do the eye test where I go back after watching all the games. I rate each area. And then I also do an average where I take the average score of each category from each game. And in both of these cases, their scores ended up almost identical in that. And so these numbers are equivalent to both what I thought and what the numbers prove. And so Young does have the better overall grade, but let's jump into the specifics. Young barely edges him out by about 3% in the short completion percentage. Makes sense. Alabama's scheme offers a lot more, but I think Stroud is just a little less consistent on the short passes, but still they're both very, very good. But Young is just another level above other competitions so far. Then the medium percentage, though, this is where it gets interesting. Stroud is edging Young out by 10%. And I will say this, I had to re-go through two games since the last time I went through this data. So the two games that I watched from this year of Stroud actually lowered a bunch of these statistics. So it wasn't even further gap before. But the way it stands, there's a 10% gap in the medium completion with Stroud there above Young. And then it's really close on the deep percentage within about 1 percentage point. And then they are equivalent on arm strength. If you want to count their long throw as arm strength, both had the exact same thing, a 61 completed pass. So their actual arm is pretty even, and I'd say they both have similar zip. I personally think Young has a little bit better zip on it, as we talked about. Some of the balls for Stroud die. They both are phenomenal at turnover percentage. Young only turned the ball over like twice out of 240 plays, and Stroud, until I watched this year's games, did not have a turnover until he had one against Wisconsin. And so his turnover rate was a winner there. But I will say this, in that Wisconsin game, it proved to me, I think Stroud is much more likely to get into a spiral in a game. You know, I feel like we've seen that, unfortunately, with some quarterbacks in the last few years, whether it's a Sam Darnold, a Mitch Trubisky, a Justin Fields sometimes. I think that Stroud showed in that game, if you look at this here, when he threw that pick, he made some interesting and poor throws after that. It took him a while to get back into it, where I think Young has a little bit shorter memory and kind of just got back in there making some good throws. Now, Stroud is being sacked less. Only 2.71% of the time will he be sacked. And this goes with the run percentage, which I think the run percentage, you can make a case. I didn't highlight one is better or not, because here's the way that works. That run percentage is the amount of plays that he actually took the ball past the line of scrimmage. So I will say this. I think Stroud ran on a play basis, per play basis, a lot more than Young did, but Young actually kept the ball and scrambled and ran past the line of scrimmage, like 3% of the time more. So I would say that Stroud actually is more mobile and ran more often, but I think that he kept his eyes downfield further, and we saw that with those sideline throws, whereas Young was more likely to take the ball and run with it. So that's kind of the comparison. So Young takes the edge, but you can make a case here. It is not a landslide whatsoever, as if you look at the stats, Stroud actually edges him out on the number of categories. I just think that the eye test, I still go with Young, but this is extremely close. I don't think there's going to be another QB in this class that will reach these two, but it could happen. So I will be interpolating this data, these statistics. I think the completion percentages are valuable to me when grading the grand scheme of quarterbacks in this class. But in the end, I'm still going to be going by the eye test. So Young has the edge right now, and I probably will go back and keep breaking down these players, especially since we still have like half a season to go. But at the moment, I'm going to give the early edge to Young. He's got 92.3, and then Stroud has like a 90.9. So I think that's valuable because I still think Young is the better overall player, but it's very close. They're 1 and 2 right now. I think they are clearly 1 and 2 for quarterbacks. Now, I think next I will be probably breaking down Hendon Hooker. To me, seems like the next level, or maybe Will Levis. One of those two, to me, will be kind of fighting for that third spot, but somebody else can pop in there too. So we're going to see what happens. But thank you for watching this video, and we'll see what happens to C.J. Stroud the rest of the season. So I'll see you in the next one.